Hello everyone, I'm AndyDavo, and welcome to one of my guide videos. Today I'm going to be covering all the skills in Blood Bowl 3 and putting them in some sort of tier list for you. We'll start with the general skills, and I'm going to work through each of the 5 skill trees. There are 60 skills to get through, so it'll take a little while, but by the end of the video you should have a really good understanding of which skills are great in Blood Bowl 3 and which ones really just avoid. So without further ado, let's dive straight in. I'm going to start with the general skills first of all. And unfortunately, I couldn't find a list of skills that have all the skills by colour category. So they have got random colours, unfortunately. But let's dive in. So the first skill I'm going to pick out is the first general skill, and it's block. Block is probably the single strongest skill in the game, or one of the 2 single strongest skills in the game. So I'm going to immediately put it in the S tier. The reason it's so strong is it modifies the block dice, and it means that you can take less incoming damage, you'll make more outgoing damage, and it also limits the ability for you to turn over and end your team turn early. So it is an incredibly powerful skill. After that, we'll pick Dauntless. Dauntless allows you to equalize your strength with your opponent, and for each point of difference in the strength, you need to roll an additional 1 on the d6. So if you're strength 3 and they're strength 4, it's a 2+ roll. If you're strength 3 and they're strength 5, it's a 3+ roll, and so on and so forth. It's a bit of a situational skill. However, it has slightly more use than situational because it does actually let teams that are lower strength actually help and compete. So I'm going to put it in the C tier. I don't think it's a great skill. It's certainly not S, it's certainly not A. It may sit in the B tier. I think it's somewhere between B and C. So I'm going to start with that. Next one I'm going to dig out is Dirty Player. Dirty Player on its own, I think I would put in the C tier solidly. However, and the reason I would put it in there is because it doesn't, other than adding a little bit of extra damage on a foul, it doesn't do anything else. So unless you're fouling, it doesn't do anything. And it doesn't decrease your ability to get sent off. However, with the new meta and Sneaky Git coming in, you're going to find that this skill is now a combo skill with something else. And because it's comboed, and because you can also protect the Dirty Player with a bribe, I'm going to put it straight into the A tier. I think it's that strong. Dirty Player, and I'm talking about DP +1. Dirty Player 2 goes there. So if it's Dirty Player 2, it's in the S tier. Dirty Player +1 is in the A tier. Next one I'll dig out is Fend. So this is another general skill. This one is a control skill, and what it allows you to do is stop your opponent following up once they've hit you. So that means your player is potentially free to run around and do stuff. So as a control skill, it probably sits somewhere in the B tier, but I feel that maybe that's a little bit generous. With Dauntless and Fend, they're probably on the same power level, so I'm going to put both of them in the C tier for now. It's certainly not a skill that you pick early doors. It's a skill that you round a player out with, but you do like it. So let's put them in the C tier. The next one on the skill tree is Frenzy. So let's go dig out Frenzy. There we go. Frenzy. So if you're just talking about my opinion of the skill, it goes there, and in fact it actually goes at the very front of the S tier, because I do love a good Frenzy me. It allows you to throw not one set of block dice, but it requires you to then, if you roll a pushback on the first, or you don't knock someone over more specifically, on the first set of block dice you throw, you get to have another go. You have to follow up, but you get a second go. So it's very good for maximising your damage output. But in seriousness, it isn't an S tier skill. I think you have possibly a hard time justifying it in the A tier, but it sits somewhere between A and B. It's certainly a utility toolbox skill that you absolutely want, and I'm going to put it in the A tier. I think I'm just going to edge it into the A tier. I think most people might find it's probably a B tier skill. Okay, next one we've got is Kick. Kick allows you to half the distance of the direction of where the ball goes once you've kicked it off. That player does need to not be on the line of scrimmage and not be in a wide zone, so there are restrictions on its use, and it is almost actually the very definition of a situational skill, because you can only use it in a specific situation. However, its power is more than situational. It is a very, very strong skill for an elf team. It's also a very bad skill for an orc team. Elves want to control where the kick goes and they want to go and rush you and beat you to the ball. Orcs don't really care, they want to punch you in the face. So, for that reason, I'm going to put it in the B tier if you're an elf, and if you're an orc, I'm going to put it in the situational tier. So therefore, we'll split the difference. I'm going to put it in the C tier. I do think you should take it if you're an elf team, and please, if you're elves, consider it as a B tier skill. In fact, it's almost one of the first skills you take on a lineman. Okay, next, Pro. Pro has had a rework since Blood Bowl 2. In the previous edition, it was a 4+ to reroll all of the dice. Now Pro lets you, on a 3+ reroll a singular dice. So, it has multiple uses. Let's just, first of all, let's leave it there. So I've dug it out. On a big guy, you can use it to reroll the wild animal or the really stupid or some other negative trait, because on a 3+ you can have another go. It's better than a team reroll at that point. On a combat player, you can use it potentially to, you've rolled a push and something else, so you're not in danger of turning over. You could pro the other dice result, and you could then improve your damage output. So it is, on a dodge, if Griff Overwald has pro, so when he's dodging away from tackle, you don't want to use his loner, you want to use effectively his pro skill. It's not quite pro. I appreciate someone in the comment section will correct me, but it's the sort of skill that lets you do stuff that you might not otherwise be able to get away with. I do like it. I just haven't found a way of bending it into my teams yet. And so for that reason, I'm going to put it again in the C tier of, I wish I could find a way of making this skill better, but I can't. So I'm going to put it there. Maybe someone in the comment section can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Okay, next one we've got is Shadowing. So Shadowing, again, we'll lift it out of here. Shadowing has had a slight rework, and the rule is quite long, so I'm not going to read the rule out, but effectively what it allows you to do is someone dodges away from your player, and you can then, you force them to do a dodge roll, they've made it, you can then follow them into the square they've just dodged out of, so you force them to do a second dodge roll, and that can just rinse and repeat for every square of movement that your opponent has got. Now, that's therefore a reasonable skill on its own. For example, imagine a gutter runner and a human lineman or a human is trying to dodge away. You force the dodge roll. Now the human's got to do it again because the movement differential between a gutter runner and a human lineman is 3, and therefore it's more likely to work. So I think I'm going to put it in the situational pile. I don't think it's as strong as kick or pro or fend. It is literally situational, and it also, not only is it situational, it requires other skills to make good use of it, because ideally what you would want with Shadowing is to combo up things like diving tackle, and sidestep and block and dodge so you don't get punched in the face. So for that, I'm not going to rate it as terrible. I think it has got some use, but I also think it's situational. Okay, next one is Strip Ball. There it is. So again, Strip Ball allows you to, on a non-knockdown result, if your opponent doesn't have sure hands or monstrous mouth, you can then take the ball off them and you will be able to put it on the floor. That's really good for an elf team. It's really terrible for an orc team. Again, I'm just using the differential between a strength team and an elfy team. And people will take this in tournaments. So you could argue it goes into the A tier for a tournament play. I think I'm actually going to put it in the B tier because overall it's all right. But I've got to consider the context of all of Blood Bowl and all teams. So therefore I'm going to put it in the B tier. It is a skill that you might want one of, but don't go crazy with it. And you really only want it for an elfy, skaven-y, agility type team, possibly a hybrid team, and it loses effectiveness as you go up team value because more people have the solid counter to it, which is sure hands. So do consider it, but don't go crazy with it. Definitely only take one. Next here's the actual counter to that, which is sure hands. If I can find it. There it is. Sure hands. Oh, no, that's sure feet. Sure hands, that blue one there. So sure hands allows you to reroll a pickup, and it also allows you to, or prevents the aforementioned strip ball skill. I think it's one of those skills that you actually do want one of pretty much on every single team, and because of that, I'm going to put it on every team. I'm actually going to put it in the A tier. It is only a 1 per team skill, pretty much, and I think that some teams might say, well, I don't really need it. But I think it is. It's the quiet skill that no one ever talks about, that people don't really appreciate. It is that good, and I am going to put it in the A tier. Next, Tackle. Tackle is a counter skill to people who want to dodge. So if you're dodging away, tackle will force them to re-roll that dodge. And it will also, on a block dice, if you roll the defender stumble symbol, if your opponent has got dodge, nothing happens. If they've got dodge and you've got tackle, now you do still knock them over. So it is definitely a strong skill. And I'm actually going to lift it into the A tier because you could argue that you want probably 3 to 5 on a developed team. You'll take one straight away and it modifies the block dice. All of those are great A tier skills. And there's even an argument that it is an S tier skill. But I think because it only modifies the dice on certain outputs, therefore I wouldn't go crazy and put it in the A tier. But I do think it's a solid, sorry, an S tier. I do think, however, it's a solid A tier pick. So we're starting to build a picture of what general skills are really strong. And in fact, there's only one general skill left, and that's Wrestle. Wrestle, again, would hit the criteria of an S tier skill. It modifies a block dice. It protects you. But it doesn't increase your damage output. Because if you roll a both down on a skull, let's say, and you use Wrestle, you both fall over. That doesn't increase the damage output. And therefore, I'm going to put it in the A tier. It does have a secondary use, which is it creates additional space on the field. Because imagine your opponent is rolling skull both down and you've got lots of Wrestle. You're now dragging players to the floor. So when it starts on your turn, there's people lying down that weren't lying down before. That's great if you're an elf or a Skaven possibly. And it's really bad if you're an orc. So it does have some additional value. And I think I'm going to put it in the A tier. So there's the general skills, which I think are super, super strong. Notice I didn't put anything in the terrible skill there. Shadowing is probably the worst. And overall, if you're picking and leveling teams up, you want a loader block. You want a dirty player, possibly 2. I think you would want at least 1 frenzy, maybe 2. It's always nice to have a sure hands. You definitely want 3 or 4 tackles. And depending on your team, depending on my explanation of the wrestle, you might want some wrestle as well. You could pick a strip ball. And then we've got Dauntless, Fend, Kick, Pro. Kick probably is the least bad of these skills. Because if you're an elf, it actually sits in the B tier. And then Shadowing is by far the worst. So that's general skills. Okay, let's move on to agility skills. First skill, Catch. There it is. It's situational. It's just situational. There are only 2 reasons you're using Catch, and that's to try and catch an interception or a ball that's sort of wildly gone all over the place, or you're trying to actually do what Catch was really designed for, which is you're trying to catch a handoff or a throw. Strength teams don't even take it, so if they don't take it, it can't be up here somewhere, and agility teams rarely pick it, but are quite happy to take it on a catcher. So I think I'm going to put it in the situational skill. It's not terrible, it's just situational. Next, where is it? Defensive. There it is. Defensive is a new skill to Blood Bowl 3, and is a skill that I've seen split Twitch communities, split Fumble communities, in fact, split every community that I've seen, and some people argue that it is terrible. Now, what is it? Well, defensive is the counter to guard, effectively, and it says in your opponent's turn, they can't use guard. So, if it worked all of the time, it would be amazing, and it would be a straight S tier pick. And when I first read it, I actually went, oh, that's amazing. Then I read it again and went, oh, that's rubbish. And it's a bit like a piece of cork that I've pushed underwater. It's gone, oh, that's amazing. And then I've pushed it down and it's gone to the right at the bottom. And then I've let go of it. And I've been curious, like, where do I think it settles? Do I think it's situational? Possibly. Does it sit in the C tier with some utility but not great? B tier, bit better than some utility. Or does it sit in the A tier or the S tier? Well, it's not S, but I'm going to put it in the A tier because while it's not a skill that is an immediate pick, it is a skill that as a third pick on something like a Chaos Warrior or a Nurgle Bloater or a big guy, I think you can argue defensive is in there. Because not being able to use guard on your opponent's turn is huge from a damage mitigation point of view. So it is a pseudo affecting of the block dice. And I'm going to put defensive at A tier. Let's see whether you guys agree or not. Okay, next we've got Diving Catch, which is here. I'm going to put Diving Catch into the terrible tree because all it does is lets you catch a slightly inaccurate ball. So if it's 1 square outside your area, and you get a +1 modifier to catch an accurate pass. You possibly put it in situational, but I'm going to put it in terrible, so I don't like it. Next, diving tackle. Diving tackle actually in Blood Bowl 2 was known famously for only working when your opponent spotted it. If your opponent didn't realise what diving tackle was, it didn't have any effect at all. It was a really weird mechanic. I don't know whether that's going to follow over in Blood Bowl 3. We'll find out. But what diving tackle effectively does is it makes it harder for your opponent to dodge away by making that dice roll too harder than it was before. So elves effectively dodge on a 4, humans dodge on a 5, and anything that was dodging on a 4 now dodges on a 6. It is definitely a situational skill. The question is it slightly better than situational skill and sits somewhere in here, or is it just a situational skill? I'm going to uprate it to the C tier and say I think it's a little bit fun. You might want 1 or 2, but it's a combo piece skill, really a combo piece skill, because you really need block and dodge and probably sidestep to make that whole player work, and probably even tackle. So I'm going to put it at the tail end of C, possibly situational. Next, a staple of all elf teams, and that is the dodge skill, and dodge absolutely doesn't sit in terrible. I'm actually going to put dodge possibly in S tier or A tier. What does it do? It modifies the dice result, so if you roll a defender stumbles against you, you can still stay standing, so it's great from a damage mitigation point of view. Is it as strong as block? No, because block doesn't have a direct counter, a proper direct counter, whereas dodge does. That's tackle, and it does let you move around a bit better. So I'm going to put it in the A tier, and I actually think I'm going to leave it there. I think it's sort of the start of A tier, and if you're an elf team, you're picking between block and dodge, whereas a strength team, that because they don't have easy access to agility skills, I don't think they're going to put dodge in here. So it's an A tier skill for me. Next, jump up. Because I play a lot of time with Dark Elves, I'm very familiar with jump up, and I do enjoy it. Where is it? There it is. It is a situational skill that is okay. It's probably had a slight nerf in Blood Bowl 3 because piling on and jump up synergized really well. Piling on, of course, is gone. So now jumping up just allows you to either block from the floor or on a 2+ or a 3+, depending on your agility state, or it lets you just get up for free. It's not a skill that you pick very often. I can't therefore put it into C tier. I've got to put it in situational because it's not terrible. Okay, we got Leap. Leap has seen a complete rework since its Blood Bowl 2 days and before. And Blood Bowl in Leap, it used to just be an agility roll. Now it's an agility roll with a bunch of minuses on it. To argue that it is terrible, I think is unfair, but I think it is situational. And I'm going to put it in here. We'll save time and we'll talk about fun skills in a little while. Okay, safe pair of hands. Safe pair of hands lets you, when you're knocked over, if you're holding the ball, instead of the ball randomly bobbling, it allows you to control where that where the ball lands, and therefore you can try and put it in tackle zones. It's at best situational skill. It's a strong situational skill when that situation comes up, but it's not a pick. There are so many better skills, and you can already see from the chart there is a load of better skills. But it's all right. If you got it for free, you wouldn't be disappointed, but you're not picking it. Okay, now an actual skill that you are picking, and that's sidestep. I'm going to put sidestep in the B tier because it's not as strong as dodge. You're not taking it over dodge ever. You're not taking it over tackle ever, but you are taking it once you've got dodge or block or whatever. So I'm going to put it's a strong control skill. Sidestep for me. Okay. Next, Sneaky Git. If this was Blood Bowl 3, it would be terrible. It was one of the worst, if not probably the worst skills in all of Blood Bowl. However, it's had a complete rework. And Sneaky Git has 3 main different interactions. The first of all, when throwing a foul, fouls themselves, now guard lends an assist where before it didn't. So fouling is stronger. Sneaky Git lets you move after you've thrown the foul action. So you can run up something, foul, and run away again. And so it's very good for a fragile player to keep it out of harm's way. And then number 3, on the armor roll specifically, if you roll a double, nothing ever happens. Doesn't matter whether you just roll the armor roll or roll the armor and the injury, so your chance of getting sent off is now halved. So with that in mind, I'm going to put Sneaky Git in the S tier. I'm not trying to encourage fouling, but I'm going to accept that it is part of the meta now, and Sneaky Git is actually an S tier skill, which is very strong statement stuff because the only skill I've put in there is block. Is Sneaky Git stronger than dodge, wrestle, frenzy, dirty player? It's a bold statement, but I think I can live by it. Stand by it. Right, the last two are sprint and sure feet. We're going to do these as a pair actually because they regularly synergize together. So sprint lets you rush 3 squares rather than 2, and sure feet lets you re-roll any failed rushes. Because you can put them together, I'm going to also put them in the situational skill tree and put them here as a pair. If you're going for something like a natural one-turner, or not even a natural one-turner now, but a one-turning type player where you're going to try and move as much as possible from the halfway line to the end zone, then sprint and sure feet actually become S tier. You have to take them. If you are not trying to do that, you're probably never going to take them. And if you got them for free, yeah, okay, they're okay. But my word, they're situational. You're almost never picking them. And I wouldn't want people to use this tier list to go and start picking skills constantly. And well, I would, but I wouldn't want them to be in the C or the B tier. So I'm going to put them in situational. They are okay at best. So you can already see now, we had a load of general skills that were really strong. And from the agility skill tree, I've managed to put 1 in the S tier. I've put 1 in the A tier, 1 in the B tier, and then everything else has gone down here. So you can see that the agility skill tree, nowhere near as strong as the general skill tree. And that's a real shame because I like playing Elves. And Elves' primary skill, one of their primary skill trees is the agility skill tree. So randoming in the skill tree is much less successful to get you a nice powerful skill than it would have been if you were randoming in the general tree where most of the stuff sits in the S, A and B tiers, or S, A, B, C. Okay, well, if you thought the agility skill tree was not great, let's go and dive into the passing skill tree. This is probably the worst skill tree of all 5 of them, and this is the one where people, they random possibly, but that's only because they're all terrible, rather than there are some uber standout ones. So, accurate. Accurate used to be a +1 modifier in throwing the ball. For some reason, they've nerfed it, and now accurate is only on quick and short passes only. At best, it's situational, and it's arguably terrible. However, I do pick it on some throwers, so I think I'm not putting it in the terrible skill tree because I use it. So it's going in the situational tree, and only just getting in the situational tree. Cannoneer is the other half of accurate, effectively. Why it was split, I don't know. Well, I do know. It shouldn't have been split. And where's Cannoneer? There it is. It's going to go into the situational skill tree with that. Those 2 skills should be the same skill, and they were only split to make sure that there was 12, I think it is, 14 skills in each skill tree, and they had to make some extra passing skills, and the only way to do that was to take some of the original current skills and split them in half. So accurate Cannoneer, no, not acceptable that they were split up. They were already down here. They needed combining with something else. Cloudburster. Where's Cloudburster? Cloudburster I'm going to put in the terrible skill tree. This makes it so that if you roll a long pass or a long bomb and your opponent tries to interfere with it and it works, you can make them re-roll it. So you've got to be doing an action, but doing a subset of an action, and only when someone else then passes a subset of your action that you've just tried, do you actually get to re-roll the thing. Nah, it's terrible, that. That is just flat terrible. Okay, jump off. This is an interesting problem, which is when you're about to get blitzed, you can choose to nominate to throw the ball before you get punched. Remember, you can't use a team reroll, so if you fluff it, you don't get to do anything because it's not your team turn. Do I like it? Well, yeah, sort of. It's a pretty terrible skill, but I'm going to put it in situational because it's not terrible. However, moving on to a skill that is terrible, Fumblerooski. It sounded so cool when I first read it, but it's going in the terrible pot. Fumblerooski. When a player moves or makes a blitz action while holding a ball, they can, at some point moving along that pathing action, they can drop the ball on the floor and carry on. It doesn't cause a turnover. Now, it is situational, but the amount of times you're going to want to put the ball on the floor and do something else and then pick it up with someone else is minimal. Really minimal. It's terrible. It's a combo skill that you should have put Games Workshop with about 2 other skills in the passing tree, and that would have been really cool. So Fumlarooski, if you'd have put that with running pass, those 2 skills together, where if you're running, you can throw the ball and then you can carry on running, a bit like Sneaky Git, you can then carry on moving afterwards. That'd have been cool. That would have been like, oh, I can do stuff with this player once it's put the ball down or thrown the ball. Running pass and Fumlarooski should be a pair, again, like Accurate and Cannoneer, but they're not, so they're terrible because they're terrible. They don't have enough actions. Now, I don't think even if you combine those 2 skills together, you would have a strong enough skill. So we're going to take Safe Pass as well, and then I'm going to put that in the terrible skill tree. And so if player should fumble the ball, it doesn't turn over. So if you roll a pass and you need a 4+, you throw a 3, you use the pass skill, then you roll a 1, normally the player would just drop the ball. Well, actually, on this example, the player doesn't drop the ball, he just holds it, so it's not a turnover. It's still terrible, because the number of times you're looking to pass is tiny, and therefore the number of times you're going to pass and fail it is even smaller than tiny. I can't recommend this skill ever. It's not a skill you want to be picking up. If you're building a thrower, some of these skills that I've put in situational and terrible may get better, but blimey, it's a stretch. Okay, pass. Where's pass? There it is. I'm going to put pass in the C tier because actually, it always works potentially when you're passing the ball, and it is a situational skill, but a situational skill with a reasonable amount of use. So if you're going to build a thrower, pass is one of those core skills that you will put on that thrower. So I'm okay with that. So let's do that. Let's put that in there. Then we'll combine that up with Nerves of Steel. Nerves of Steel allows you to throw the ball or catch the ball in tackle zones with no negative modifiers. And again, I think that's actually a pretty decent skill. It's not as strong as Sidestep, but it's not terrible. And it does have some utility. So pass and Nerves of Steel probably on the same power level. And therefore I'm going to put that in there. We can then combine that up with the other skill that sits probably on that same power banding, which is Leader. And Leader is also possibly a B tier skill because it's a free reroll. So some teams where you've got really expensive rerolls, if you can pick that up for a general primary skill cost, 20 TV, and the reroll costs you 70, that gives you 2 extra skills that you can then effectively, for the same team value, put somewhere else. That's pretty good. So Leader sits somewhere in the B/C tier. I think for some teams it's probably a C tier skill, and some teams it's a B tier. The meta has moved towards more rerolls, so 3+ Leader is probably standard, and therefore I'm going to edge this into the B tier, but it's a crap B tier skill, or it's a very strong C tier skill. Like, it's a C+ or B-, depending on your point of view. Then we've got one other skill to go and dig out from this pile, and that is Hail Mary Pass. Yep, that's terrible. Don't pick it. It's terrible. It's just flat terrible. Don't pick it. There we go. Why? Because it lets you guarantee to turn over as your next action, pretty much. So you can drop the ball deep, and then you can throw it really far. I think if you want to try and practice with a withdrawn defense, maybe you could have a little bit of fun with it. If you're playing Skaven, maybe. You could then hoof it down the field and run after it. I don't think it's got any other use, really, other than hoofing the ball, and even that is in situational at best. So you can see here, I've dumped almost all the skills in the situational terrible tree, with only 3 skills making either B or C, and that's out of a selection of 12. So it is the terrible skill tree. Okay, we're going to move on to strength skills next. So if that skill tree was bad, this skill tree is almost the diverse opposite, and this skill tree is great. Next one, armbar. So armbar is when your opponent tries to dodge away from you. If they fail that dodge and fall over, it's a bit like being hit in the face with Mighty Blow. It's an okay skill. I don't think it has lots of value, and I think it's probably one of the 3 or 4 weaker skills here. Maybe that's harsh, dropping it in situational skill, but they've got to be dodging away. They've got to fail the thing. Nah. And even then, you're only applying Mighty Blow to something. I don't think it's a skill you're ever picking. I think it's a skill you might be okay with randoming, with a little sad face, or if you start with it for free, you might be okay with it. But apart from that, meh. Okay, next, Brawler. Brawler lets you re-roll a both down result. When I first started playing Blood Bowl 2020, I actually wondered whether or not it would be an A tier skill or an S tier skill because it modifies the block dice. It's a strength skill, so therefore maybe big guys would take it. And if it was all of the both downs in a dice pool, I think you could definitely put it in the A tier, and I think that wouldn't be too strong. But it's only one of the dice in the dice pool, and if the other dice that you're staring at is a skull, it's only a 2 in 3 chance to turn that other the both down into something better than the both down you've already got. And so I think therefore it's probably a B tier or even actually a C tier skill. It's an okay skill to be given. It's not an okay skill to be picking. So let's avoid that. Next we've got Break Tackle. Break Tackle in the old game would have been up here because it was using your strength stat to dodge rather than using your agility stat. I need to quickly read the rule on that one because it's actually changed, and I need to see where the breakpoint was. Now it adds +1 flat to dodging, so it gives you +1 agility effectively, unless you're strength 5, in which case it gives you +2 agility. So some players, like Biggins for example, might still look at Break Tackle because now you're dodging on a 3, not a 2. But Saurus is never using Break Tackle. I think it's therefore impossible to rate it as an A tier where it used to be up there. And I think now Break Tackle is probably a C tier skill. I don't think you're taking it above these sorts of skills. I think you're okay if you randomed it and only on specific players. Normally Agility 3 players kind of want Break Tackle now. So your Human Blitzer, your Amazon Blitzer, something playing Norse possibly, that sort of player that's got strength access, that's agility 3, you might take it if you're needing to be mobile. Maybe. Yeah. Okay, a fun skill next we've got is Grab. I'm going to put Grab straight in the B tier. I think it's a skill that you can get a lot of value out of. It helps you control the board, which for me is one of the reasons I would put a skill quite highly. It cancels sidestep, which is really annoying, so that's really good as well. I don't think it's good enough to put in the A tier. I think it's better than some of the skills down here like Pro, Diving Tackle, Pass. So I'm going to just drop it in the B tier. It's okay, and I think you can have a lot of fun memeing with it. It's a real shame Frenzy and Grab don't combo, because I think if they did combo, you would see some fun sideline control players where you can grab things and move them to where you need them so you can frenzy them off the field. And I would like to vote and lobby that Grab and Frenzy start comboing. I think that'd be amazing. Okay, next we've got probably the other strongest skill in the game other than block. It's Guard. It goes straight in the A tier. It allows you to throw more blocks. It limits your incoming damage. It now assists on fouls. If it didn't already need a buff, it got one for free. It's bonkers. At high TV, it's actually probably the strongest skill in the game, because at low TV it's block, at high TV it's Guard, because everyone's assumingly they've got block. So I'm just going to drop it there. It is absolutely amazing. If you are wondering what skills you should be taking on your teams, it's block and guard, guard and block. Just take those skills. You're going to have a whale of a time. They are so powerful. Next, we've got... whoops. Let me just put that back. There we go. Next, we've got a Juggernaut. Juggernaut allows you to turn a both down result into either a pushback, or you can cancel wrestle and you can knock people over with it as long as you've got block. It's a combo skill, but when you've got the combo pieces, it's a lot of fun. So when you've got the combo pieces, I would say it's in a B tier. Without it, it's probably in situational tier. So I'm going to put it overall in the C tier, where it probably belongs. But you will find that possibly it's a very strong C tier skill as you get your players leveled up. Okay, next one is Mighty Blow. Mighty Blow definitely belongs in the A tier. It's not an S tier skill, as some streamers might have you believe, but it is very powerful. It helps you remove other players. And Mighty Blow +2 is S, Mighty Blow +1 is A. Please note, you cannot level a player to Mighty Blow +2. You can only ever take Mighty Blow +1, and therefore it's an A tier skill. The damage output is huge. In fact, that little fist symbol, just from a mathematical point of view, Mighty Blow is actually a ×2 modifier against anything you hit and knock over. Doesn't matter what the armor class is, it's ×2 modifier. Think of it like that. Don't think of it like a little fist symbol. Think of it like a little multiplication symbol with a 2 next to it. It's that strong. Multiple block is the definition of a Situational skill. Sometimes you can use it, but you need to be high strength. You need to be stood next to 2 players, and you probably want to have block, and you probably want to have grab. Nah, it's situational. Okay, the worst skill in the game. We didn't think we'd get there straight away, but we have. It is Pile Driver. It will always be moved to the end of this skill tree. And it allows you to throw your foul action, not an extra foul action, your foul action as some sort of pseudo piling on action if you didn't remove the player. Unfortunately, it's in the wrong skill tree. It's in the strength skill tree. Most people who are fouling are not strength general access. They are agility, or they are agility general. So it's in the wrong skill tree. It costs a fortune. It uses your foul action. You'd have to be blocking with your fouler in the first place. It makes no sense. It wasn't synergized. It wasn't thought about. It is absolutely terrible. If there was a skill tree below, a ranking below terrible, like something very rude, it would be there. It is the single worst terrible skill in the game. I have fired 3 players that have randomed it on principle when they got it and just fired them. Do not take this skill under any circumstances. Do not waste a skill slot on it. It is terrible. So let's move on and talk about something that's actually reasonable, and that is Stand Firm. Stand Firm, Light Grab, and Sidestep. I think these all sit along the same sort of power curve. They're not an A tier skill. They're definitely not an S tier skill, but they control the board. They allow you to do stuff. And I think that if you had a bunch of players with Stand Firm, you would find that your opponent would have their head in their hands from time to time. So think about Stand Firm. Do try and take some, but make sure you've taken your core skills first, like your blocks and your wrestles and your dodges and all that. Guard, before you take Stand Firm. But it is a very nice 3rd/4th skill. And if you randomed it as a first skill, brilliant. You've got a cheap, reasonable skill. Okay, 2 last skills. These Strong Arm. Strong Arm's had a rework, and I think unless you're going to use it to... let's put them in the right way around. If you're going to use it to throw players, then that's okay. Yeah, you can use that. Now, Strong Arm used to be an extra +1 on throwing the ball, and its Strong Arm was useful, but it doesn't do that anymore. I'll read the rule. It says here, this player may apply a +1 modifier to any passing test they roll when throwing a teammate. This player that doesn't have throw teammate cannot have this skill. So you can't random this skill, but you need to be using it to throw teammate. It's terrible. It's not situational. It's just terrible. If you are ogres, maybe. Ogres don't exist in Blood Bowl 3, therefore I'm going to rank it as terrible. And then the final strength skill, which is Thick Skull. This is a situational skill. Half of the KO results that you suffer will get cancelled out because on a roll of an 8 on an injury, you used to get KO'd, now you won't. It's okay. It's a situational skill. If you have it for free, you'd be okay with it, but unless you start with it for free, you're not picking it. So, now, looking at the skills tree, we've got an S tier skill up here in Guard. We've got Mighty Blow, an A tier skill. We've got a Strength, Stand Firm strength skill. Then we've got 3 C tier skills, 3 situational skills and 1 terrible skill. If you compared that to the previous skill tree, you'll notice that the split of skills is kind of even, but there's a good selection of decent skills up here. So it's okay to random in the strength skill tree if you've got enough time, and that's why randoming different players actually comes with different payoffs. And if you're randoming a secondary skill and you want to do it straight away and you happen to hit one of these 3, you're probably delighted with that because you've saved yourself a fortune in team value. Okay, the final skill tree now, which is Mutations. That is going to start with Big Hand. Big Hand allows you to cancel modifiers on the weather and when... In fact, it's picking the ball up. It cancels modifiers on picking the ball up, whether it's in tackle zones or with the weather. It is... Whoops. I need to stop doing that. It is definitely a situational skill. Whether it's terrible or not, possibly, but you will see people pick Big Hand on whether that's a Skaven team. Typically, like on a Gutter Runner, you'll have it as Big Hand, or some of the teams that aren't actually in Blood Bowl 3 yet, if only they were. You'll find that teams like that do exist and they do take Big Hand. So therefore, it's not terrible. It is situational. Underworld Denizens is one of the teams I'm talking about. Next, Claws. Drop this straight into the B tier. It's not C, it's not A, it's B. It requires some modification, but it's a solid skill, and you are picking it on probably 2 or 3 players. Don't go crazy with it. It doesn't synergize now with Mighty Blow. Do not fall into the value trap of thinking that Claw Mighty Blow is the way to win games of Blood Bowl. It is not. It is a leg up at high team value so that you can play less good than your opponent, or you have a catch-up mechanic. But because Claws and Mighty Blow don't stack, Claws only work on the armor now, and Mighty Blow would then therefore only work on the injury. Unless, of course, you're punching something which is less than AV8+, in which case Claws has no effect, and now Mighty Blow would work on either. Do not waste lots of team value picking Oodles of Claw. It is not a good skill from that respect. But you do want 2 or 3 on your Chaos or your Nurgle, or you want a Stormvenom with Claw Mighty Blow. Disturbing Presence. Disturbing Presence means that in a 3-square grid around your player, the opponent has a -1. It does stack. It's the sort of terrible skill that you would terribly take if you got it for free. Well, you wouldn't take it, but you definitely wouldn't say situationally take it. It's a terrible skill, but it's a fun terrible skill that when you get it for free on Nurgle, you don't go, oh, never mind. Okay, Extra Arms. Extra Arms adds +1 to picking the ball up flat or catching the ball. So it is a B tier skill, or is it a C tier skill? No, it's not as good as Claws. It's not as bad as Nerves of Steel. No, it's a C tier skill. Nearly a B tier skill, but it's a C tier skill. Foul Appearance. When your opponent is trying to block your player, they need to roll a D6. On a roll of a 1, they don't block it. Now, I'm going to put it in the situational skill. And the reason I'm not going to put it in terrible is because you might pick it. And that's because when someone blitzes you from far, far away, they used to, in the old game, run up to your player and then throw the blitz. When Foul Appearance goes off now, if they're 4, 5, 6 squares away, they don't move. They can't move. They're done. So it has it's got a teeny tiny buff, which I like. And therefore, I'm going to move it out of terrible in the old game and put it into situational. It's still bad situational, but it's okay bad. It's situational. Next one we've got is Horns. Horns is a C tier skill solidly. I'm going to put it in here. It's not situational. No, in fact, I'm putting it in situational. I was nearly putting it in C tier. You're not a skill you're picking. You're not picking it. Well, if it's a not pick, it goes in situational. C, you're picking these skills. Situational, when you get them, you're like, oh, okay, that's all right, but you're not picking it. Next, Ironhard Skin, terrible. Claws doesn't work against this player. Oh, okay. It's not a general skill, so you can't, if you're an Orc, for example, where you might consider it, where your armor value is important to you, or a Dwarf, you can't pick it, and your Chaos Warrior is not picking that over loads of the other skills that are available to it. Your Bloater is not taking it, and then your armor 9+ players are not taking it. Don't take it. No. I would consider throwing it in the bin if you randomed it as well. It's that bad. And another really bad skill, Monstrous Mouth. +1 to catch, Strip Ball can't be used. Situational, Strip Ball, +1 to catch. It's a mutation skill tree. It was a fun idea, but I think if you put... This is another skill that needs combining with something else. So let's say Monstrous Mouth plus 2 heads, put those together, that's an interesting player. But it hasn't. Next one we've got is Prehensile Tail. Prehensile Tail is +1 to dodging away. It's a situational skill when you can combine it with something like Diving Tackle, so you can now make it -3 to dodge away. That's interesting. It's not a terrible skill, but it's not a skill you want to be picking. Tentacles is situational. It's not as good as it used to be. It's possibly terrible, but it is okay. You can boil Tentacles down if you want an easy way to remember Tentacles. If you're strength 5 and they're strength 3, they're dodging away on a 4+. Dead easy. Effectively, take your strength and for every point of strength different to your opponent, it starts on a 6 if you're the same. If you're 1 point of strength different, you need to roll a 5+. If it's 2 points of strength different, it's a 4+. 3 points of strength, it's a 3+, and so on and so forth. So before, it used to be a very complicated calculation. Now you can boil it all the way down and look at it like that. That's probably the best thing they did about Tentacles. It's worse, but it's an easier calculation to remember. Next, I've missed one. We've got 2 heads. This is situational. I think it's possibly C tier actually. Extra Arms 2 heads are skills on a player you might take, and you might even take 2 heads on agility 3 players, like on Chaos Renegades, just to give you a bit of ability to move around. So I'm going to put it into the C tier, and then very long legs. Very long legs. Reduces by 1 the negative modifiers to agility roll for jump up and +2 to interfere with a pass. It is a terrible skill. There we go. Final skill, which I missed when I was doing the previous skill tree, is on the ball. On the ball, I'm going to put here, it's a bit like having a wizard, so I'm going to put it in the C tier. You could argue, in fact, I'm going to put it in the B tier. It's a bit like having a wizard. On the ball, it's like pass block. It's a great skill, and you are picking it on throwers, so let's put that in there. Quick review of the mutation skill tree. Look how many skills I put into the terrible skill. 1, 2, 3. So there are 3 terrible skills. I put tentacles, prehensile tail, horns, foul appearance, and big hand, all in the situational skill tree. So there's a lot of really bad skills. There's a couple of reasonable skills, and then 1 strong skill. So mutations, randoming mutations on most of the teams is not great because you're hitting a B or a C tier skill most of the time, at best, whereas you're probably hitting situational skills. That being said, you tend to random mutations at the start of the player's career so that you can then build around it, because a lot of them are situational, i.e. they're combo pieces to a bigger player or a better player. So by all means, you can random a mutation tree, chop out the terrible skills, and then build accordingly. Whereas in strength, you kind of want to do, you've just got a good chance of getting a reasonable skill. It's not a combo piece, it's just a good skill on its own. So I hope that tier list helps you. You can see here what skills you should be taking in great numbers, what skills you should be staying away from, period. And you will now see when you go matchmaking, if you see people picking these skills, you know that they either haven't seen this video or are still new at Blood Bowl. Till next time, I hope the video was helpful. Please leave a like, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.